Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the online webinar about the virtual classrooms, teaching and learning during pandemic. And we are going to talk about challenges as well as opportunities of this period, as we all belong to academia from different parts of the world, different countries. First of all, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker of the day. Our keynote speaker of the day is Ms. Khadija Muhammad. Khadija is a first tour officer currently serving as the Assistant Cultural Affair Officer in the U.S. Embassy in Dhaka. We welcome you aboard, Ms. Khadija. Khadija is a 2016 undergraduate Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellow, proud daughter of Somali immigrants. She's often compiling Afrobeats playlist for her friends, reading books at a local coffee shop, or listening to a new podcast. Such a lovely introduction that I have read in so many times. Welcome aboard, and I would hand it over to you to listen to your perspective, first of all, regarding virtual teaching and learning.
Thank you so much for the very warm and kind introduction. Assalamu alaikum, namaskar, in Bangla, shukwa bronho, and welcome everyone. I'm joining you all from Dhaka, Bangladesh. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be here today. I'd like to first and foremost thank our moderator for today's discussion for, again, the very kind introduction. I'd like to thank our colleagues in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and Nepal, and all the other colleagues that made this program possible. I want to also especially thank all of the alumni who are here today, who are going to share their perspectives and their knowledge and practices with all of us today. I'm really excited and honored to be here today, as this is a very important discussion, as we all are here because we know how important it is that every student has access to a quality education and a safe learning environment. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented unprecedented challenges to all of our communities. And it is honestly, I would say, very sad that oftentimes we have to state this right at the beginning of our conversations, because the reality is that we are still living through this pandemic, and the challenges that it poses to our communities continues to evolve and change every single day. I want to first and foremost just recognize that this pandemic has affected all of us in different ways. So for all of you who are here today who have lost loved ones, friends, colleagues, students due to this pandemic, please accept my deepest condolences. And for those of you who have personally been affected by this virus and have had to go through the challenge of recovering and moving past it, I want to take a moment to recognize your resilience and just say that honestly, it's truly commendable, the work that you're doing. I would honestly say, as someone who would like to say for a lot of my life have identified as a student and as a constant learner, it's always a true honor to be able to engage with educators like you. You all are doing important work as often first responders, right? In terms of supporting your students, your colleagues, supporting your leadership at your institutions, and during this pandemic, leading the effort of transitioning to online education. This pandemic has showed us that the barriers, right, and the inequities that are within our communities have not gone away during this time. If anything, it's become very clear that there are a lot of barriers that prevent students, especially students living in underserved and underrepresented communities, with access to a quality education. In each of your countries, the scenario looks very differently, but the reality is that there's so much work that needs to be done to really ensure that all students have access to a quality education. And more importantly, what we're seeing with the pandemic is that it's very important that we also recognize that students have access to safe environments. As we all know, with the extensive lockdowns that continue to be in place in various countries around the world, this has meant that students who once found school to be a sanctuary are now no longer able to access that sanctuary. With students learning from home, facing other challenges within their household, such as witnessing domestic violence or experiencing other forms of violence, we recognize the urgency and the need to ensure that we're still able to reach these students and be able to support their efforts in terms of improving their well-being. I think something that you all can definitely agree to in your work is how education and teaching is truly holistic. It's not just focused on assessments, right? Seeing the progress of students learning, but it's also ensuring that students have access to a safe environment, access to nutrition and food, and also just access to the resources they need to have, a better sense of mental health and wellness. So I really look forward to today's discussion and in hearing reflections from all of you. I want to just take a moment to also recognize that, as you all know, the US government is truly committed to ensuring that students from all over the world, including the United States, have access to a quality education in a safe environment. In terms of our exchange programs, there's immense opportunities and programs that you all have participated in that seek to support educators like you in the work that you're doing within your communities by providing access to tools and resources to help improve the classroom learning experience. I know a lot of times now in these conversations that we have about virtual learning, we're often talking about information and communication technology and how the pandemic, like I was mentioning briefly earlier, has really expanded and exacerbated the digital divide. I think now more than ever, this is the time for us to share practices of innovation, right? Ingenuity within your communities. In my own experience of being here in Bangladesh, the opportunities that I've had to speak with teachers who are serving in very remote areas of the country, I'm always in awe and inspired by the creative solutions that they have developed during this time. One teacher was once telling me about how she came up with a plan to, by the end of every week, to physically visit the homes of each of her students, because she knew that some of her students did not have access to even a mobile phone, where they would often try to listen to recordings on daily lessons and didn't have access to other materials such as like pencils and paper to be able to complete assignments. So this teacher would literally go every week, visit each of the homes, also check in with the parents, make sure the parents understand the expectations for the students, work with the students to ensure that they were able to meet the deadlines and complete their tasks. And then on top of that, she also worked with other colleagues at her school to come up with a plan in which they would weekly provide students and their families with food packages, because they also recognize that students, are having many more challenges in terms of their parents not being employed, so income no longer coming into the household. So they also recognize the importance of addressing food security issues in that community as well. When this teacher told me all these efforts that she was engaged in, I was truly in a loss for words, because it really does demonstrate that despite the challenges we're all facing, you all are doing the work in which you're putting the well-being of your students and your communities before you. And that's truly commendable and remarkable. So without further ado, I want to again just thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you for the work that you do to support our communities. Thank you for showing up and being there for your students as advocates and as teachers. So thank you so much again. And I hope you all continue to stay safe, stay well, and work with one another so that we can really improve the education scenario in all of our countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khadija. That was a lovely opening speech, and I am all excited to introduce all of my panelists one by one. So I would begin with Zakia Sultana. Zakia is an English language teacher with a track period of ICT use in the classroom and familiar with the latest innovations in delivering learning materials using digital methods. She also worked as an Intel master trainer. So I've been an Intel master trainer as well. So I love you. Okay. So she is an Intel master trainer at Adamji Cantonment College and Rajendrapur Cantonment College, and trained both teachers and students on how to use Google Apps. And I'd love to listen to you about your experiences as well, because I saw a major difference of how teachers adapt to new technologies and how students adapt to new technologies. That's very different. She also develops content for several educational YouTube channels. So welcome, Zakia. My next speaker will be Afsana Amin. Afsana Amin is the vice principal of Cherry Blossoms International School and College. She also has more than 7 years of experience working as career and college counselor, which I think is an amazing job to do because at this age, the students definitely need you more than anybody else. She is a member of the International Association of College Admission Counseling, American School Counselor Association, and Bangladesh College Counselor Network. Afsana also does many social services in the field of education. She has been promoting STEM education and girls' education in the rural areas since 2014. My next speaker is Hassan Ali Muhammad. Hassan Ali Muhammad is again an English language instructor, works both the English Access Micro Scholarship Program, works with the English Access Micro Scholarship Program, besides teaching as a freelancer contributor in Open Ed and editorials. He writes for the leading Bangladeshi national daily English newspapers. During his bachelor's and master's program in English language and literature, he participated in the Access 10-year celebration workshop held in Washington, D.C. in 2014 and learned about conflict resolution skills, which is amazing again, at different universities. He studied educational technology during the Teaching Excellence and Achievement Program in 2018 in Montana State University, USA. I welcome you, Hassan Ali Muhammad. My next speaker will be from Nepal, Dr. Ganga Ram Gotham. He is the Associate Professor of English Education and currently the Director of Open and Distance Education Center of PUAN University. He has more than 20 years of experience in teacher education, educational innovations, and professional networking. It's always lovely to talk to these people who have worked for more than 2 decades because they can tell us the real story of the whole transition that we have had in the new millennium. Dr. Gotham contributes to the development and dissemination of English language teacher education curricula in universities of Nepal. He is one of the founding members of Nepal English Language Teachers Association, NALTA, Teacher Educators Society Nepal, TISON, and Executive Committee member of Nepal Association of Humphrey Fellows. Welcome, sir. My next speaker will be Ms. Neha KC. Ms. Neha is an e-teacher alumna. She is the school director of Akshara School in Kathmandu. Her role includes training teachers and readying them for online and in-person classes. She is a passionate educator with nearly 2 decades in Nepal's education sector with special interest in developing the academic experience from the rote to progressive model of learning. Amazing. Ms. Casey is currently an MPhil scholar at Kathmandu University, specializing in educational leadership. She also writes on education reforms and learning issues in Nepal's leading dailies. Welcome aboard. My next speaker will be Dr. Subrat Sharma. He is a professor of environmental science and engineering at the School of Science in Kathmandu University. He has a PhD from University of Natural Resources and Applied Life Sciences, Vienna, Austria. After completing PhD in 1996 in the field of hydrobiology, Professor Sharma received a postdoctoral fellowship in 2001 for research on something that I pronounce very difficultly. So I will try. So that is paleolimonology. Is that right? Yes, okay. And using head capsules of midges as indicators of climate change in the high altitude lakes of the Himalaya at the same university. 9 years later, in 2010, he was awarded Senior Fulbright Research Scholar Fellowship for continuation of the research in Maryland, USA. Welcome aboard, sir. My next speaker will be Mr. Mustafa Heather from Pakistan. He is a professor in management and administrative sciences at the Department of Public and Administration at the University of Karachi, where he also received Masters in Public Administration and PhD. The title of his thesis was The Role of Judiciary in Implementing Good Governance in Pakistan. Very important and pertinent topic, I must say. Dr. Heather currently teaches social sciences and has an integral team member and was an integral team member in executing the 2014-16 University Partnership Program, a grant funded by the US mission to Pakistan between George Mason University and the University of Karachi. Welcome aboard, sir. My next speaker will be Miss Aisha Sohail, who I would love to see, because when I was looking at her picture shows such an energy level on her face. So Miss Aisha Sohail has an extensive experience of working in the development sector, particularly in the field of education. She started her career as a teacher in a government school adopted by a non-profit organization. Currently, she is serving as the head of development program as well as board member of CARE Foundation. Ms. Aisha is specializing in curriculum development, teacher training skills development, and education management. She is interested in creating a platform for the underprivileged children that could enable them to exercise their talent and pursue their interests. Amazing, lovely work. And last but not the least, my speaker is going to be, he looks very young in the picture. I don't know if he is. Yes, he is. Okay. So his name is Muhammad Hassan Dajana. Am I correcting? Am I pronouncing it correctly? He is a global UGrad alumnus. He is a fellow at Teach for Pakistan, very well done, aiming to solve educational inequity in Pakistan through its 2-year leadership development program, aiming to nourish future leadership in the education sector of Pakistan. Hassan is also a member of the Global Shapers community, aiming to solve global issues through mutual collaboration and coordination. In his leisure time, he can be seen reading books about history. How can we see you? Do you? I would love to. I would love to meet all those people who spend their time with books when they are free. So actually, they are not free. They are busy at that time as well. So here we go. And I would like to begin with my first speaker, that is Zakia Sultana. And I tried to jot down some questions for our first round of question as per your experiences and your expertise. I would like to begin with those first set of questions, and then we can have further questions as you talk about them. So the very first question from my side for Zakia is that as I see your profile and your interests and how you make people use technologies effectively and efficiently, do you think there is a huge difference in content development and delivery for face-to-face teaching and for online teaching? How do you see these differences, first of all?
Sorry to cut you over here, Aisha. After this, if we can please take group photo as well, so that we can have that for our record. After Ms. Zakia's comment, we can have group photo. Okay. Thank you. Over to you, Aisha. Over to you, Ms. Zakia.
Okay. So what my experience said that actually there is a big difference between the virtual reality and the actual face-to-face learning. In actual face-to-face learning, you have your students in front of you. You can have the eye contact, you can see their expression. They will also respond to your question and your delivery, which is almost absent when you are doing this in a virtual classroom. And most of the time we see that the students are actually log in and they are not actually there in the classroom, and there are very few responses there. So in virtual classroom, I think only 30 to 40% learning is going on, but in face-to-face classroom, it may reach to 90 to 100% also. So there is a big difference. And the other thing is that during this pandemic, the switch off from offline to online classes, the teacher was not ready beforehand. So they have to learn the technology, and then they have to deliver their content there. So this is something new for them. So they have to learn these things, and then they have to deliver these things to the students. But students are already actually, they are quite they are the member of the screen age, and they know quite well how to use the screen and the other things. So while delivering the lectures, or while delivering expressions online, sometimes it is seen that the students are doing some things which the teacher cannot control. But in an offline classroom, I think it is never going to be possible, because there is a strict role of the teacher, that who is in control of the classroom. But in the virtual classroom, sometimes this may not happen. Naughty student, he or she might use a video, or he or she might doodle in your the PowerPoint slides like this. So there is also a question of control and management, which is totally absolute in a offline classroom. So I think there's a huge gap. So you cannot compare the online classroom to the offline classroom. There is a huge, this is the digital divide, because the students are actually really, they are expert in that digital area, which the teachers are still learning. So I think that's my response with your question.
Thank you so much, Zakia, for your initial thoughts on my question. And I would request everyone to switch on their cameras so that we may have the picture as Shanila's requested.
So I can still see a few non-video participants. Let's wait for them for a couple of more seconds so that they can also turn on their cameras. At the moment, I can see only 12 video participants and 3 non-video participants. But for them, I'm assuming now that they don't want to be part of the video. Okay, so on the count of 3, I would like you to give me a smile. 1, 2, 3. Yay, thank you so much. And now one more picture for in which if you guys can give me a quick thumbs up so that I can use that one as well. On the count of 3, please. 1, 2, 3. Yay. Thank you so much, everyone. Good job. So over to you, Ms. Afshan. Thank you so much, everyone, once again.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Zakia, for your input right now. And now my next speaker is Ms. Afsana Amin. And my question to you is, as I was going through your interest areas, so Afsana, please tell us about this. As I saw that you are promoting STEM education as well. So while we are talking about virtual learning and virtual classrooms, how do you see virtual or online learning environments different for STEM? Specifically, when I talk to teachers teaching science and maths and such subjects, they keep telling me, oh, you teach social sciences, so it's easier for you, but it's not that easy for us. So how would you address that? And in the countries where girls' education in rural settings is already a challenge, how do you see in this virtual environment? Is this an opportunity for girls' education, or is it a challenge for girls' education? So if you may be able to address both of these questions, please do.
Thank you, dear. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It is a very good question. And I think, am I audible? Hello? Am I audible? Hello, assalamu alaikum. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your question. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I actually very I do agree with my previous speaker. she said that it is a very, it is a great challenge actually for us as a teacher and as an administrator as well. So while actually dealing with the science classes, it is very hard as especially in higher classes, as we need some practical classes to make them understand about those scientific technologies or technicalities. So in terms of that, what we did, that we somehow manage our science teacher to come in our library, laboratory, so that he can show some experience virtually and also through YouTube. And we also either see it or participate through their science presentation, which they presented in their regular classes. And we also organize some virtual science project fair, where they showed their projects and with the help of their teacher, obviously. And we also, actually we start our virtual classes very early. We started our virtual class at 18th April 2020. So by this time we are experienced enough dealing with our science classes and other classes, including co-curriculum activities like music, art, or any other thing, any other co-curricular activities. And in case of rural areas, I'm actually from one English medium school. I'm a vice principal of Cherry Blossoms International School and College. So it is not in rural area, but I did that social service for as a sensible citizen of our country. And so my school have all the technologies, everything, but it was not possible in rural areas. And so girls, in terms of girls education, what I know, in most of the rural areas, the virtual class was not available. And actually, I have to look in the background, because in reality, such desperate measure in case of a lower middle class developing nation lacking proper structural capabilities raise some issues and concern for both pupils and mentors. And this study aims to explore the practice of online-based distance learning is very challenging, associated with all the problems with the student and pupils. And so the structure was not there in rural areas, and hopefully our physical classes already started in 12th of this month, and now all the students are going back to the school once a week first, then gradually it will increase, hopefully. And so girls education, it was not an opportunity for the girls education in any way, because of the lack of the technologies. And the most sad thing is that in this short period, the students, I mean female students who were in higher education, most of them got married. We have the picture that I am so sad to say that in one school where I promoted girls education, I found that only 1 or 2 student is available, female student is available in higher class, is in standard 8 and standard, and this is the same case in almost all the school in rural areas. Why? Because you know that being a developing country, and we have so many social norms, and the guardians thought there was no education ongoing, so the guardian thought that it will be properly suitable for them. There are also financial problem as well with the parents. So the parents thought that it is a time that they should get married. What will they do sitting at home? So most of the girls got married, and this is a heartbreaking thing for us. but this is the reality. And when I hope that I could say some positive things about the pandemic situation, that if we actually, if opportunity for us, if we had enough technologies in the rural areas, but as we lack it, it didn't happen.
Thank you, Sana, for addressing both the questions in detail. And I know it's sometimes very saddening, and it's sometimes very depressing to state these things. But this is why we are here, and this is why we are unpacking all these challenges as well as opportunities and discussing with each other. My next speaker is Hassan Al Muhammad. And Hassan Al Muhammad, I would like to ask you, looking at your profile, I would like to ask you that when you see the online teaching and learning in comparison with face-to-face teaching and learning, do you find the online and virtual environment more inclusive than physical classrooms? And when I say inclusive, I also mean that are these inclusive of more diverse opinions? Is it more open for communication, or how do you see it?
Thank you for the question. I would love to answer this because I have been enjoying the virtual classes since the beginning when the pandemic hit, like knocked at our door. So I found that there are some challenges, the way our previous two speakers have spoken about them. But I found that I have more opportunities in these virtual classes because uh, like before the pandemic, students used to write with pen on the paper. Nowadays, students have two options. Like whenever I ask them to write something, they ask me a question, sir, is it on paper or on Google Docs? So see, this is how now the opportunities are being created, okay, because of this virtual classroom. And before this pandemic, I think students were not used to use Google Docs and some like Google Classroom, Zooms, Google Meet. So they are not used to this, but nowadays they are using it very frequently. I have a mixed experience because I have been teaching in an English medium school. uh, the students are coming from very high class and middle class. At the same time, I am also teaching access students who are coming from economically disadvantaged families. And it is very blessing that through this access program, some students are getting this wonderful opportunity to use technology for the first time in their life, because access program gave them a smartphone, and this is the first time they're using a smartphone. Probably they didn't have Facebook, they didn't have Zoom, Google Classroom. So when they are learning these new technologies, I feel really blessed and I feel very happy to talk about all these technologies with them, and they are loving it. Of course, we have some challenges, but I find more opportunities. And I think that students are becoming open-minded because when they are coming to Facebook, social media, when they're using social media, they are also learning how to use it, how to utilize it. Like without training, if they would use it, I think probably they would misuse. But with our guidance, with the teacher's guidance, they are using it almost perfectly. So I'm very happy that students are utilizing these opportunities through these virtual classroom experiences. I think I'm done. Anything shall I add?
Thank you so much, Hassan. And I'm glad that you see the positive side, the brighter side, and you show that to us as well. And thank you so much for that. So now my my next question will be with Dr. Dr. Ganga Gotham. And sir, with you, I would like to really converse about how the transition from physical environment to digital environment, how the transition happened specifically for university teachers. How do you see this process, and how the university teachers adapted to it, or were they happily adapting it, or were they finding it difficult, or how do you see the university teachers moving on in this transition? Thank you.
Thank you, Huma. Thank you for having me here. And we have heard wonderful experience from classroom teachers, but since I'm managing online education program at my university, my perspective would be more from macro level as a manager of the program. So during this COVID-19 period, we have adopted three phase strategy. The first phase was to respond to COVID-19 as a crisis management strategy. Since our university has more than 400,000 students, thousands of teachers, and 1,200 campuses all across the country, it's a mega structure. So in order to manage all these online programs across the country, we deployed Office 365 after a couple of months since the COVID-19 came into Nepal. And we used Microsoft Teams as the tool for delivering online education across the board. That was the first phase. The second phase, as Jakia mentioned earlier, since the teaching took place virtually, but we were not sure whether there was any learning or not. So in order to make sure that there is engagement among the students in learning, we needed to integrate pedagogy in the virtual learning. So in the second phase, what we are doing at the moment is we are integrating learning management system, which is Moodle in our case, and then integrating learning management system into the virtual teaching, which is now making sure that there is some learning and engagement of students in teaching and learning activities. And the third strategy, we are using this COVID-19 experience as a springboard to embrace information and communication technology and digital tools in the university teaching and learning system. So for this, we have trained teachers in the first phase on how to use Microsoft Teams in a couple of months. Then currently we are training teachers on how to use LMS in their day-to-day pedagogy. And the third phase, we will now go on a blended mode of education in the post-COVID context. So we are utilizing this COVID-19 experience as a foundation for virtual learning. So that's all what we have done so far, and the challenges and the future course of action, I think that we will come next in the next round of questions. Back to you, Huma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to call upon Ms. Neha. And Ms. Neha, for you, my specific question is, as I asked Sir Ganga Gotham about the teachers, how they are handling it. So for you, we have been hearing about how the rural area students are having issues of access to internet and all that. With you, I would like to ask about how the students generally and specifically in urban settings have been able to adopt or have been able to respond to the virtual learning environments.
Thank you so much, Huma, for the question. Namaskar and good afternoon, everyone, once again. So since I'm basically based in the urban area, Kathmandu being the capital of Nepal, as we all know that the COVID-19 has resulted in school shutdown all across the world. But as a result, education had changed dramatically with the phenomenal rise of e-learning, whereby teaching happening on virtual mode. So talking about myself, I first took part in the online course in ELT curriculum back in 2012, which was followed by many online national and international conferences and trainings only later in 2020 after the COVID. So, however, at Akshara, the school I work in, virtual learning wasn't a new practice because students and teachers were all aware of it even before the COVID. Because as we did the virtual collaboration with many international schools from Germany, India, UK, Israel, and Pakistan itself, the only thing that surprises me is how we used to require the whole admin staff assistants for technical support to run one virtual session for 1 hour, but how things have switched now, making it comfortable for the individual itself. When I remember how what happened last year, little did we know that back 2 years back when we did a virtual learning with one of the schools in Pakistan through Google Classroom, that was before COVID, that would turn into our real classes for almost next 2 years. So Ganga sir also talked about the LMS tool, learning management system. So in my school and in most of the urban setting in Kathmandu, people are using, teachers and students, they are using Google Classroom, Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft, and many other programs as the LMS. And we trained our teachers regarding the instructional technologies, and our IT department provided technical support to the parents as well. So that helps us to create a very good community to run the virtual classes, or let's say distance learning. And we also trained teachers regarding the LMS for teachers of other school, and did many training sessions regarding online teaching and learning as a part of CSR. And so that's how it's been until now. So people, students, they have their mobile phones and laptops, so they use that. And our school has always been a techno friendly from before the COVID itself. So it didn't take much time for all of us to go into the transformation. Definitely it was chaotic for everybody here in Kathmandu itself, but they settled down suddenly with a very less hamper to the curriculum, and didn't wait for much for the learning to begin. So this is how the status of um, uh, online learning, virtual learning is happening in urban area in Kathmandu at the moment.
Thank you so much, Neha. And I'm pretty sure that the countries we are coming from have some very similar scenarios and have some very similar challenges as well. So thank you for sharing your part of the story. And now I would request Dr. Subodh Sharma to please address, as you also are a university professor and you are teaching and researching in one of the fields that when we hear about this, we feel as if this has to be in the real world. This cannot be done in the virtual environment. So any such kind of subjects and disciplines when they were being taught in the university, and all of us had to go online at once, how did the university, how much the universities were ready for this change at your end, and how did the management of universities supported the teachers to go online? How do you address that?
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it was 23rd of March 2020 when the first casualty was reported. One mother, 32 years old, with her child. Mother was detected COVID positive, and she died at Kathmandu University Medical School. And very next day, Prime Minister of Nepal declared lockdown. Well, declaring lockdown, that was rational because that would maintain social distancing. That was so important to stop the spread of COVID-19 virus. But the decision was taken with not even allowing 24 hours for the students to reach their home. And that really started a panic on campus, and students didn't know how to reach their parent home safe. So that challenge we had to accept, and we had to rent cars and let the student go home by night buses or private vehicles. During the daytime were not allowed. That was really panicky, more panicky than COVID-19. But for 3 months, like there were no cases of any spread of COVID-19. And within 2 weeks' time, we decided to hold an academic council meeting. And at the council meeting, we decided that we will go online. Kathmandu University is running 7 schools, and one of these schools, like School of Education, faculty is there. They are very good on online teaching and learning. And the faculty there, they happen to teach the faculty in other schools on different modes, different tools, different modules, and it worked out very nicely. That was a lesson learned, and that was, in fact, a good story that we have experienced at Kathmandu University. But there are few courses, especially like environmental studies course or pharmacy, which you cannot teach on online mode of teaching learning. For that, they really have to go out to field. Still hoping that COVID-19 situation will come to an end and students will be allowed to go out to field, to learn out in field, in nature, collect data from there, and then start writing their dissertation or thesis. To conclude, online mode of learning is not to compensate face-to-face, but this is, I would rather consider this as an alternative mode of delivery only during this pandemic situation or crisis situation. We sooner or later will have to go to face-to-face mode of teaching. Thank you. You are muted.
Thank you so much. While listening to the stories from Bangladesh and Nepal, I can relate to everything that I've been listening so far, and I feel as if sometimes while sitting in Allama Iqbal Open University, which is again a distance education university in Pakistan, sometimes I was feeling as if, is it just us who are facing so much challenge? But when we listen to all of you, I feel like, okay, all of us were almost in the same boat, and we went through the same procedures and steps as Sir Ganga Ram Gotham just now told us about the 3 stages, and I was like, okay, we did the same as well. So now I land back in Pakistan, and I ask my Pakistani fellows speakers, first of all, Dr. Mustafa Heather, how would you address the 2019-20 that year of teaching and learning? Because I know that in past few years, Higher Education Commission in Pakistan was already doing efforts for hybrid model and stuff, but not every university was doing it. So how do you see the pre-pandemic years and then 2021 academic year? How do you compare these two eras in the university teaching in Pakistan, specifically in
Thank you, Ms. Afsha, for giving me the opportunity, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Actually, these 2.5 years are what we can say, we are actually making the history. I would like to congratulate each and every individual who is right now survived in this pandemic, that we are the part of history. And so as the teachers are. See, when we start our online classes way back in the first week of March, we, the faculty and students, very few of us were used to with this system. But now in 2020 or 2021, 22, most of us are now used to with this system. And we prove ourselves to be more adaptive. And what I personally feel, that at the university level, there is 30% is the classroom study, and second 70% is actually the outside class study. So what we usually focus, we focus on that 70%. I agree with all my participants that online class is not the actual replacement of on-site class. but it is the best remedy that we have right now. On what we can do at university level, yes, I do agree. At the primary level, things are horrible for mothers as well. If someone is mother of 2 or 3 studying in class, let's say grades 1 and 3 and 4, so it is a very what you can say, a nightmare for them to make them sit on front of camera and make them focus toward the camera. But as far as the higher education is concerned, where students are more independent and students are more, what we can say, resilient with the system. So what I personally believe, it depends upon the teacher, how the teacher is going to carry the class. What we usually do in our classes, we usually don't go for the simplex classroom study, the virtual classroom study. We try to have a duplex. That is, we try to make students speak, or we go for the breakout rooms and then we try to study discuss the group discussion in those breakout groups, so that we engage the student in the overall system. So what I personally think, that the virtual classroom in 2019 was a bit a startup, and it is a challenge for all of us. But the virtual classroom in 2021 now have become an opportunity for all of us to have something new normal. And what I personally believe, this is my personal what we can say thoughts, that pandemic would be finished inshallah very soon, but online classes will have to stay over here.
Thanks for I love the way you elaborated, as well as you gave us a hope as well at the end. Thank you so much for that. Miss Aisha Sohail, we have been listening to the perspectives of 3 university teachers, and now I come back to you with a question of schools in Pakistan, because when we talk about, Aisha is there, can I see Aisha?
Yeah. It's just that my internet is rickety right now, so I'm joining back and forth.
Okay, fine.
So I won't be turning my
Aisha,
video on.
Okay, thank you. Aisha, when we look at the schools in Pakistan, I see a variety of schools. Like, you have been working in a government school, which is kind of adopted by a non-government organization. So there are plenty of, I would say there's a variety of schools in Pakistan, and wherever you are, you can see. So how do you see that different kinds of schools, like government schools, private schools, then there are chain schools, there are individual low-cost schools. How did they manage, and how do you see how successful they have been in maintaining the educational process in Pakistan?
So thank you so much for your question, Aisha, and hi to everyone. So I think the virtual teaching and learning is very context-based, and I would like to touch upon it on 3 different fronts. One of course is our context of non-profit organizations operating in the country, and one such is the organization that I work with. So it's been a huge challenge for us to address this access to education for children belonging to underprivileged class. And so when this pandemic happened, we introduced a smartphone program, and in that smartphone program, we actually did a survey first as to how many children could use smartphones. And so based on that survey, we pilot tested the program with 8 schools and with nearly 600 children. And of course, we trained 44 teachers as well. But surprisingly, or unfortunately, I would say that the program couldn't work in our context because yes, parents, either father or mother, had a smartphone, but they always complained about the lack of internet or data packages, of course, to use the applications, the learning-oriented applications that we introduced in order to teach different concepts to students. And of course, the parents were not tech savvy. So that in itself was a huge challenge to train parents first. And then, of course, if the father would have a smartphone, he would be out all day. So again, the coordination issues, teachers coordinating with the the parents in the evening, and then and at the same time, parents also were resistant to the technology use. Of course, because one, they were not tech savvy, and then multiple other problems, including that they had no internet connection or low internet connection. And of course, they had to spend money to use the data. So multiple problems that we grappled with. And so in our context, of course, it didn't work. And then I also taught at Government College University during the pandemic. And so like the previous fellow rightly said, that by the time the students land in university, they're tech savvy, and it's easier for them to use technology and to stay engaged with it throughout the class. And of course, it also depends on how the teachers are engaging them. And so you see the results. Degree program, which is on education and technology. And the first semester I attended, it was an interesting experience, of course, very, very intense, because there was a lot of screen time, and it, of course, had some negative effects on my health as well. So screen time, of course, and then the good thing about it was that there were video lessons available as well. So even if the live sessions were not being attended by some students, they were easily able to attend the same lessons via videos. And so that way it was helpful, but of course it does not provide the wholesome experience of studying on campus. And so I took a gap year. But yes, the private sector and the schools, there are good private schools, and they use the platform quite well. This virtual teaching and learning experience worked well with schools like the City School and Beacon House, etc. And they have been reporting that the response of students have been really positive. But then, of course, again, like I said in the beginning, it's completely context-based. And yeah, I think that's about it from my side. One opportunity, if I could touch upon, since we are talking about challenges, and if your next question is about opportunity.
You can go ahead. If you want to touch upon that right now, you can go ahead. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, your voice was gone for a while, but it's back. Okay, we shall come back to you during our second round of questions. And I would like to thank you so much, Aisha, first of all. And I'm so glad that you gave us a kind of wholesome picture of how this diverse background of students and diverse background with the diversity within facilities they have, how they are coping with it. And my question to Mohammed Hassan will also relate with this, that Hassan, how do you see the digital divide in Pakistani scenario, and how do you see that the government and non-state organizations are helping out students and their families or their parents to cope with this situation? How do you see that?
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes.
First of all, I would like to say thanks to Mr. Usman and Mr. Shahid from the PUAN Islamabad for this opportunity, Ma'am Huma for this wonderful moderation, and Ms. Khadija for the fantastic and insightful words in the morning. I would like to provide a little context of who am I and what do I do, because I've listened to fantastic speakers. The educational experts that we have here have more experience than my age. I'm 24 years old. So I'm part of a program that's called Teach for Pakistan. It aims to nurture young university graduates into next educational leaders of Pakistan. What they do is we hire young university graduates that are out of college through a rigorous 2-year program through which we go to low cost rural sector schools in the district of Islamabad that don't have teachers, and they are very underfunded. So coming back to your question, how do you see the digital divide in the Pakistani scenario and how government and NGO sector are helping out? I teach in a community in a rural sector of Islamabad called Sihala. I teach about 60 students. Most of my students are orphans. The parents that they have are they work all day as maids, as low cost workers. So they don't have access to phones. The only phones that they have are small mobile phones. So they have only a text message services. And in order to, Pakistan has gone through in the past a year and a half through 4 different COVID imposed lockdowns on schools, and our schools are still open half week. Only 50% students come. So we adopted techniques like through learning packs, through going to the community and teaching them. When you come to the digital divide scenario, I'll talk about Pakistani children, school going children, because that's the sector that I deal with. Pakistan has about 40 to 50 million children. 22.8 million, according to experts, are out of school. They're not going to school. They're OOSC. And the digital divide is such that about 90% of the children that do go to school are in the public sector, low cost private sector, in the madrasas, and only 10% are in the high income range areas like private schools or high cost private schools. They have access to technology, they have access to resources, but the other 90% they sadly do not, because of economic condition and situation. How is the government helping out? The government, first of all, the main aspect of the government was helping these people out financially. They created the Ehsas initiative to give them money so that they can first feed themselves. Feeding them, the children, is first, then providing access to technology is second. How is the NGO sector and non-government sector helping out? So in the non-governmental and sector, there's a lot of fantastic work going on. There are edtech platforms trying to disrupt the education sector in Pakistan, such as Maqsad, that recently raised millions in dollars in startup money. There is Noon Pakistan, there is Exam Bytes, and further other. In the NGO sector, what telecommunication organizations are doing, such as Jazz and Telenor, is they're partnering up with organizations such as the Citizen Foundation, and they're completely providing them a hybrid learning model with finances from both TCF and Jazz, so that the students under the ambit are able to learn from a hybrid model. So the challenges that we see in this sector are paramount, but work is being done. But my little input on the challenges side will be, there's a philosophy called exit, voice, and loyalty. The people who have the economic might have the voice, they have the education, they're foreign, they are very well capable. But the people who are in the lower income strata, the poor people, the people that don't have Twitter or access to Facebook or the higher authorities, their voice is not heard. And millions of children of these people, they don't have access to primary education and no to technology. Our real impact and input should be going into these communities, listening to them, and then taking their voice and taking them to the higher authorities in Islamabad, in the decision maker, and then bringing them change. A lot of our discussion are focused on the 10% people that have access to technology. There are a huge 90% gap that is in front of us, but we care to look the other way and not to them. So I hope that answers your question, ma'am. Uma, thank you.
Definitely, it does answer, and thank you for telling us the details. Now, I would like, first of all, to give a call for open discussion. If anybody has any question, the people I can see online here in the Zoom, or if Shanila could help us, if there is any question online in any other portal, like on social media or somewhere. So we would love to address those questions before I go for my second round. If there's any question, somebody can type in the chat, or the people I can see online can unmute themselves and they can ask questions. And if we do not have any question, then I have noted down a few more, and I will go around once again with my panelists. Okay, so I would actually begin with the second round. If in between we get another question for somebody specifically, I can ask you to address that. So Zakia, I would be coming back to you, and this might be our second and last round of questions. So Zakia, when I come back to you, I would like you to address upon the issues faced by mainly by teachers, because in Pakistan, as I was seeing it, the teachers were having mobile phone interaction as well as online classes, and I saw some of the teachers who had no beginning and ending of a work day. So how did you see it happening at your end? What was happening with the teachers during the pandemic and online teaching?
Thank you, Homa, for the question. In my region, as we are from the urban area, most of us have the access to the digital classroom and the other devices. But if you look at the entire scenario of a country, you will find that maybe 50% teachers doesn't have that access to go online or to use a digital device. So the first thing in the pandemic which comes to the mind, that training of the teachers, not delivering the lecture, not going or connecting or reaching to the students, but training the teachers with the weapon by which you can actually you can win a war where you need to learn something which is very new. And this learning is also going to happen in the online mode, which is very new to the teachers. So that is the first challenge for the teachers to cope up with that thing. And the urban teachers, they are having the training and they actually cope with that thing, because they know they have the access of the digital devices. They know how to use the laptop, they know how to use the mobile phone, because they are using these things over the years. But what happened to a village or country teachers who has only the face-to-face who has only the opportunity of face-to-face learning and a button phone, not an Android phone, and a button phone which doesn't have a social media or anything. So this is something which has to be addressed. I think this is something which has to be faced by every country. Even in a school like us, which is actually an elite school, we also face that there are students who doesn't have the access to such kind of devices. So what we have to do as the educator, we have to find those students, we have to talk to the parents, and we then have to buy Android phones for them, and then have to send it to them. But this is something which could not be, I think, done through the entire country. So with these 2 years, most of the teachers, not all, most of the teachers are equipped with this new kind of devices, new kinds of teaching to deliver these things with the students. But the question remains that actually we still couldn't reach the 100% teacher along with the students to deliver the lessons that is actually prescribed by the board. So that is I will say that is the sad end of the scenario that we have to face at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Zakia. And if I could hear from you, Afsana, that how are you seeing this scenario now? What is your takeaway from this discussion, as well as from 1.5 years of pandemic? How are you seeing it, and where do you think we have reached so far, and how do you see it? Do you see a positive future ahead with the technology intervention in education? How do you see it from here on?
I do see a good opportunity and possibilities of course, as you know, that our students are advanced now in technologies with the help of these online classes. Even students from KG1 to KG2, now they can operate Google Meet or other apps like that. And the actually sarcastic thing is that before this pandemic, we discouraged the student to use the smartphones. And now we have to teach them how to use it properly. how to navigate it, everything. So it's a positive thing as well. And at the same time, I will also focus in some other problems that it also mentally not good. It is not good for them, as it is not. They're now the guardian is still complaining us. They're spending most of the time in online, and so they're having their eye problem now. Some of them are suffering from some physical problem, but everything has disadvantage and advantage, and in every way. So I will see that our students are now more technology friendly. They are advanced in using technologies, but at the same time, they're having some physical issues due to overspending their time in online. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Afsana. Hassan Ali Muhammad, do you use any specific sort of strategies, as Afsana was just addressing, that students are spending so much time online, teachers are spending so much time online. So do you use any specific strategies, or can you suggest some specific strategies which may help students and teachers? We are talking to screens all day. We are in a totally different normal. So how do you suggest to cope up with this? How do you help your students do this?
Okay. Thank you. As the online technologies are being very popular nowadays, so we need to be careful about the misuse of it at the same time, because some students are misguided by different type of people in social media, and even by their friends who have bad intentions. So we also suggest our students' parents to look after everything, like what they are doing, what websites they are browsing. Okay, and there is an option to look after what website is your children is your child is using. So as a parents, I think we should look after this right now, because they are using it for the first time. They might be misguided, and if we cannot guide them, so there might be problem in our future. And this is the problem right now I'm seeing. At the same time, I'm also thinking that there is a good future, because students are getting used to a lot of new technologies that will lead them in the future. And probably our lifestyle or the way of working, way of doing everything might change in the next 2 decades. So students are getting trained by the new technologies. So it's not a negative from all perspectives. There are some positive outputs as well. I think students can utilize them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hassan. And I come back to you, Dr. Gangaram. And as I see you in the family of distance education, I would like to ask you, as I asked earlier as well, when at our open distance education institution at Alumni Network Open University, when we stepped into online mode, and initially we were having traditional and blended mode, but then last year, March, we stepped into completely online mode. I used to say myself that my job description is changing. So how do you see that? What was the teacher's response to that, as they were having so much on their plate now? So how did you and your colleagues manage that? Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. We also started this distance education program in my university in 2015. So at that time, when we talked about distance mode of education, people would laugh at us. Can there be teaching and learning online? That's a low quality, that's inferior. With this 1.5 years experience, it has now demonstrated that though it was not our choice, education through online mode is also possible, though there are advantages of being in a face-to-face mode of classroom. So one of the big challenges for us was to train the teachers, because we had varied level of digital competency among the faculty members. So training them to do online mode of education was extremely challenging. Some of the professors, senior professors, didn't have their email address, so they would be reluctant to switch into online mode of education. So what we did was we started with what they already knew. They were not using their email, but they were chatting with their grandchildren in the US or Australia. So we started from there. So if you approach what they already know and build on that, so it's not that difficult to train the teachers. As far as the future is concerned, future of distance education is concerned, I think it's inevitable. Thousands of parents losing their jobs. The world is becoming more and more competitive in terms of employment. I don't see many students coming into the face-to-face mode of education because they can't afford to do that. So they will have to work, and at the same time, they will have to study. So I think we need to use this COVID-19 experience as a very good foundation for blended mode of education in the future. And we need to prepare both the teachers and students accordingly, psychologically, that quality education is possible through virtual mode, and there can be meaningful and productive learning on a virtual mode. So I think we need to create that kind of discourse from what we have learned in the last 1.5 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you mentioned about the economic crisis and how people lost their jobs or they were going down in their business, Neha, as you mentioned that you are mainly working in the urban area, and when we talk about economic crisis, I see that in Pakistan, if I look at it, the agricultural areas of the country, which are mostly the rural areas, they were leading almost a normal life. They did not have much of a change. But in the urban sections, there was a huge crisis because everything was locked down and there was a huge economic crisis, definitely. And with that, we have 2, 3, 4 learners in every home, and every home does not have more than 2 digital devices. So that brings up a question: how did they manage the learning? And number 2, was there any kind of special support from your state or from any non-government organization for these people to manage the students' learning?
Thank you so much, Huma, on that question. So basically, since I belong to an urban area here, what happened is, like you said, the economy has hit everybody in overall general, even the teachers are not fully paid because the students do not pay fully. So it's been very difficult for the schools to manage that way. When we look at parent side, especially the parents who were working with the tourism sector and who had a business, abroad, international and national ones. So they were hit hard. They really had a big problem in managing their financial crunches. And no, the government has not been able to provide support in such cases. So many, I'm not sure about the exact data here, but then schools were small primary schools closed down because of the funding crunch. And because of this, there had been one of the reason being this, there had been so much psychological issues. Miss Apshana had mentioned about the eye problem regarding the health issues of children, but then here, especially in teenager students, what we had seen was they were having psychological issues, because they had adverse effect on the socialization. Usually for the teenage kids, especially, it's the time for them to get socialized, to make friends, to play, to go into sports, but then they didn't get opportunity to do so because of these scenario. And maybe the reasons could be family relations, or like you said, economic conditions, the hormonal changes, or anything. So these kind of things has ended up putting a huge psychological impact on virtual learning of the children. And the economical crunches, it shows the impact on getting the gadgets for children. You know, some have mobiles and laptops both, while some are trying to do everything from the mobile device only. And this had again lead the students to the gaming distractions. So overall, there have been no such kind of direct support from the government. However, the schools are facing this kind of situation along as the children are suffering.
Thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure that in the coming financial years, when the people of finance will be drawing or listing down the budget heads, I'm pretty sure there are going to be new budget heads coming up within the sector of education, not just for schools, but or colleges or universities, but also for the learners. And I wish I see that. And Dr. Subrat Sharma, I would put up a similar question to you as well. How do you see your university and universities around ready for the future? As you said, as I asked, and you said as well, that yes, there are things which we still think cannot be done virtually. How do you think we are going to be back into the physical environment? And if, for instance, for some more months, or God forbid, and for a year or so, we cannot, how do you see we are ready to cope up with the higher education at university level?
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I have a very wonderful feeling today, wonderful in the sense that what Ms. Jakia or Afsana or Hassan and all colleagues who are seated here, the way you are trying to share your experience, I felt like you were all in Nepal during pandemic. You know, it's a pandemic, so the problems are the same everywhere. And the best way to resolve such a situation is talk among ourselves, share our experiences, and then find a way out of it, and then again share, and then scale it up. That's what we did during pandemic situation here. Coming to your question, like there are few courses which you really need to deliver face to face. Under that condition, if this pandemic, hopefully it will not continue, I pray that this will come to an end very soon. But if it continues, then we really have to now change the courses and make those courses online compatible. We have to shift from lab field to online courses during this pandemic situation. There are no other way out other than that. So as I said, many points are covered here. So I will try to touch upon a few other issues which have not been covered about the opportunities. You know, one of the biggest opportunity this online mode of teaching has created is this has given an access to global education network. So students in Nepal or Pakistan or Bangladesh, like they can attend any courses from anywhere on earth, from best universities. And there were also cases where you don't really have to pay. They are all available free of cost for those from developing country. Just imagine being seated in Lahore or Kathmandu and listening to a talk from Harvard University, the biggest opportunity. And this has definitely saved time, money, and efforts. There were few issues here, like now we are so much engaged in online, and which time is most preferable, like that time management, we'll have to do it by ourselves. And other beautiful opportunity this has created was there are records available. Like even now we are talking and this record is available. We can listen to these records later on. But very interestingly, some of the faculty members, professors at Kathmandu University, they denied to provide records saying that this is my patent. So that was another unbelievable situation that came across. But we realized that teachers are better prepared when it comes to online mode of teaching than in classroom. This is for sure. And regarding all challenges like poor internet connectivity, network problem, a lack of high quality devices, or quality assurance in evaluation, that is very much depend on where did the government of our respective countries put the priorities. So I've just got to know that in rural areas it's very difficult. In urban areas, well, where there is optic fiber, it's very easy. So in the days to come, our alumni must work together and then keep on sharing the experiences. It would have been much better, Madam Afshan or Miss Afshan, whatever you would like to be called, yeah, preferably. We could have talked during pandemic situation when there was a problem, and then we could have solved the problem there and then. So I have a screen PowerPoint slide, but I'm not sharing, keeping the time in mind. And later on, if any participant want, you can share that.
Thank you so much. We have got like 2 or 3 minutes left, and I have 3 of my fellow participants here. I would like to touch upon in a minute or so to one question of all 3 of you. So first of all, Dr. Mustafa Heather, how much ready we are for the future? How do you address this?
How much ready we are?
Ready we are for the future.
We as a faculty, yes, we are ready, and we have been more resilient, and we have proved to be more resilient because none of us were higher on this skill that we are proficient in this online teaching. But yes, we have adopted, and this is the best thing for what I can say for the faculty, that in spite of all the challenges of technology, challenges of setting the virtual classrooms and maintaining the decorum of the students, we actually prove to be more resilient. And yes, we are ready. As I've said in the first round, that pandemic would be end soon, but these online classes, virtual classes, that digital ecosystem would be remain here forever.
Thank you so much. My same question is to you, Aisha Sohail. Ms. Aisha Sohail, how do you see how ready we are in the education sector at school level?
So I think we have to look at the pros and cons, like some of the fellows have already touched upon it. One opportunity that, of course, I would like to talk about briefly is that as a result of this pandemic, what I have learned is that some of the major problems that we were confronting in the nonprofit context is teacher training, and technology could be a wonderful solution for it. So now we are moving towards training teachers through video-based lessons. And of course, we are also into making a portal that would gauge the level of engagement those teachers have while watching the video and after watching the video. So that is my biggest takeaway from this whole experience of pandemic and technology use.
Thank you so much. And my last participant, Mohamud Hassan, what do you say? How do you see the future at this moment onwards?
Every challenge is an opportunity. We know how things have changed. We know how we need to cope with it. We know how to change the stuff. Every moment in time, there comes a push that we need to change, and we need to change rapidly. COVID has given us the push, and we will have to change, and it's in our hands. The one thing that I'll say at the end, in the school level, one thing that really needs to improvement and change, that I'm saying that will be inshallah adopted in the few while, is the assessment center. You are teaching the children, but how are you assessing them? Just writing them answer in English is not enough. Assessment needs an overall. That is happening, and I'm very hopeful for a future, and it will be a very positive future. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And with that, we come to an end. And I would like to just mention one point here, that for the students with any kind of special needs, I think technology has given us much more opportunities to be more inclusive for them as well. And I was never able to use such multiple media content in my classrooms as I've been using during the pandemic. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your part of the story. And thank you so much, as one of the participants said, for making history during this pandemic as well, and seeing the positive side of the pandemic as well. We are trying our best, and we will keep trying our best to keep education going on and making our students and our community learn better in the coming years as well. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So
So
now
thank
we
you.
break for refreshment, huh?
Yes.
That's one thing, online cannot share.
Yes. So we all have to make our own tea and coffee and then have it. Enjoy.
Yeah, I start with water, okay?
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Go
Bye-bye.
ahead. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Sharita. Are we done?
Bye bye.